Welcome back to another video. My name's Carl Gosling and today we're going to be taking a quick look at how to get the best out of your Logitech G920 or G29 in WRC 8. Now there's lots of videos already out there about this, but these are my personal settings and I think they're a good base for most people. You know, I try and set the wheel up to be as sort of realistic as I can, comparing it to my car in real life. Now, you might like the wheel maybe a touch heavier or a touch lighter, but I'll show you how to do that as we go through. But what's important is this, in my opinion, gives you the best feedback about what the wheels are doing in relation to the road, your levels of grip, understeer and oversteer. Which is of course what's important. So first things first, screen capture. I nearly forgot. Let's get that fired up. Yeah, there we go, great. So first things first, this is on the PC of course. So I've got the Logitech G Hub, which is the drivers for all Logitech devices. If you're on a console, you probably won't have this, so you can skip this bit. But for those of us on PC, click your G920 or G29, whatever it might be that you've got. And basically, we're not going to do anything in here. We're just going to make sure it's all default. So that's default. Click on the little steering wheel to the left. 50, 900, ticked, and 10. Leave them all as they are. Modern games, you can adjust all this within the game, so there's no need to play around with these. They're only for compatibility with older games that don't let you adjust things in the game. Same again for the pedals. Leave them all as default. If yours don't look like this, then put them to this in case you've changed them for any reason. So that's all you're doing there. And then we're going to bring up the game itself, which I've already got minimised here. Let's just turn the volume of the game down, you don't want to hear that. So, if you look down the bottom of the screen, there is a picture of a screwdriver and a spanner. We go into here, we go to controls. Now, mine's already on the Logitech G920 tab. If it isn't, there's a drop down keyboard. The asterisked Logitech G920 is my custom profile. The one below it is the default profile. But we want to look at my one, obviously not the default one. So that's what we're on. Key bindings tab just to the left of the settings tab up here. If you need to reassign anything, you can. I think from memory, it was all correct. The only thing I changed was the handbrake because I prefer to have it on a paddle, the left-hand paddle, because I play H-pattern shifter. So I believe everything else was exactly as it came out of the box. Yeah, pretty much was. Okay, so that's all fine. The only thing you will want to do, oh yeah, this is a good point. The only thing you want to do here, and you must do this or you're going to have real issues driving, click on brake and look over to the right hand side. You've got sensitivity, dead zone and saturation. Now the G920 or G29 has kind of a progressive feel to the pedal. The further you get towards the end of its travel, the harder it gets. Now the very last 10% or so of travel is really very hard to press. It's a good effect to simulate brake pressure, you know, for a setup that doesn't have a load cell, but it is very hard to press. And depending on how the game comes configured, you may not be reaching 100% braking within the game because you're not pressing the pedal hard enough. Now for this particular game, we've got a control gauge at the bottom here. You can see I'm illustrating it with my mouse. If I now press the brake pedal, because we're on with selected brake pedal, that gauge will go up. I'm not sat in my racing seat now, so I can't illustrate it, but if you are, press your brake pedal as hard as you can. You'll see you probably get to about 80% of that gauge before you almost can't push your foot any harder. So what you need to do is look up to where it says saturation, bring this down to about 80%. You could go a bit low, you could go 75 if you want. Again, this is really a little bit personal. Depends how hard you want to press the pedal. The lower you bring this value, the least, I'm going to say this backwards, the lower you have this value, the further you don't have to press the pedal to achieve 100% braking force. If you had saturation at 100, you'd have to move the pedal 100% of its travel to achieve 100% braking. And as I just described, that's really hard to do because of how hard that last sort of 10% of travel is. So bring it down to about 75, 80. That way, the pedal will feel firm and hard, you know, when you want it to, and you can modulate at the end there just by easing off the pressure a little bit and pressing a bit hard. It does work quite well, but you will at least achieve 100% braking force without breaking your ankle. trying to press the pedal. So play around with that if you want, but I found 80 was about right. I don't mind having to press quite hard. I'm used to pressing hard on my Fanatic setup. So 80, but you must do that. If you leave it at 100, you'll never reach 100% braking effect. So set that on 100. And we go back over to the left-hand side here, and you've got clutch below brake. Click on clutch, and this is a similar thing. We need to adjust the saturation. And the reason for that is because by default, if we go over to saturation again, it's sat on 100% by default. What that means is, for you to be able to change gear using your H-pattern shifter, you will need to depress the clutch pedal 100% of the way, all the way to the floor. Otherwise, it's not going to let you go in gear. Although actually, I think this game does let you go in gear anyway, but it shouldn't do. If, like Dirt Rally, for example, if you haven't depressed the clutch beyond the saturation point, you'll just get a crunching sound. And even though physically your gear stick has gone into gear, if you look at your gear display on the game, you're not in gear, you're in neutral. I wish all games did that, to be honest, because otherwise you can almost drive around banging through the gears without pressing the clutch. What's the point in having the clutch? Maybe they'll add that to a later update, or maybe there's an option here I haven't noticed that enables that. But anyway, back to the saturation. In real life, if you press a clutch pedal down, you probably only need to go about 40% of the way before you're actually able to put your stick into the next gear. Any less than about 40%, it's going to go and crunch. So set that to about 40%. 35-40% is fine. That way your clutch pedal goes down that distance, 30-40%, and you'll be able to change gear. You know, in real life, you do not go 100% of the way to the floor before you can move a stick. It's not how a clutch works. Once those plates have disengaged enough for the friction to release, you can change through your gears. So I find 40%, 35-40% to be about spot on. You can check your steering. Again, the control gauge is now going in the middle, so at this point you can turn your wheel all the way to the left, all the way to the right, and you'll see it move back and forward accordingly if you just want to make sure it's right. Mine was, there was no issues there at all. But yeah, just the brake and the clutch are really what need, you know, setting here. Otherwise you're just not going to have, you're not going to be able to drive properly. As far as dead zones go, if this control gauge was showing a little bit of input, even though the pedals aren't pressed, that's when you would add in a touch of dead zone, because what it would effectively mean is the game's registering pedal input when there is none. Now obviously mine's not showing any input on the control gauge for any of the three pedals. Yours shouldn't do either really, but in case it does, that's what the dead zone is for. You can move that up a little bit until you're able to move the pedal a touch without anything happening, and then you get to a certain point and then it activates. I mean, it's not how it would actually be. You'd only adjust it if it was already showing pedal input when there was none. So you'd adjust it up until the control gauge then showed nothing, and that's your new 0 point. I hope that makes sense. But you shouldn't have to unless you've got a problem with your pedals on the G920 here, or G29. Anyway, that's the clutch and brake. They're the only things you need to adjust there. So, force feedback settings, top right hand corner there, go over to settings. First thing in the list is test vibration. This is an interesting one because the vibration effects don't seem to work. I don't know if it's a problem with my computer, a problem with the Logitech drivers, or a problem with my G920 itself. The vibrations work in all my other sims and games, but for some reason this doesn't seem to do anything. So maybe you'll have a different experience. But it's kind of irrelevant anyway, it's not important. What is important is the next few settings. Now, speaking of things that don't seem to make a difference or work, max wheel angle. Sometimes I load the game, this says 40 like it does today. Other times it says 500, other times it says 420. And what's really amusing is that I click on it, nothing happens. I can't actually change this setting. It won't even let me highlight it. Look, I'm using the cursor keys here now. It just skips straight over it. And if I put the mouse on it, that doesn't work either. So I don't quite know why that is. But the wheel functions with its 900 degrees of rotation, and that is all that's important. So maybe that slider works for you. If it does work for you, set it to 900, because that is what your Logitech wheel does. And if you set it to any less than that, you'll be using less of your wheel's rotation. So set it to 900, unless for some reason you want less. I don't know why you would. And this is a rally game, not a Formula 1 game where you might only use 360 degrees. So if you can adjust it, leave it, put it at 900. If you can't adjust it like me, you can't adjust it, Don't worry about it. It works anyway. So next thing in the list, force and effects. Overall force. These aren't described in the text there that you can see, so I'm only going to brush over them quickly. It's the overall force of your force feedback. If you adjust that up or down, it's going to increase or decrease the overall force for all the following settings below it. So leave it at 100. That way you've got the full capability of the wheel at your disposal. The wheel isn't very strong anyway, so turning it down doesn't make any sense. You know, we all upgrade to stronger wheels. We don't decide we want less torque than what a G920 can provide, which is only about 2.5 or 3 Newton meters, something like that. So leave that at 100 so you've got the full spectrum of torque available. Next one down, self-aligning torque. This is as it sounds. It's the torque the wheel will apply to self-align itself. If you let go of the steering wheel, it will spin round as you're moving forwards in the car back to the center. And it's how strong that effect is. So if you're holding the wheel with one hand and you turn it to 90 degrees, you'll feel a force pushing against you, trying to center the wheel again. That is what self-aligning torque does. It's kind of like, you know, it's almost the weight of the wheel based on the direction of the wheels. If you're centered, there's not any force at all, and if you're at 90 degrees, this is the force you're feeling. So I find 70 is about nice for me. If you prefer a slightly lighter wheel, try 60, try 50. If you prefer a really heavy wheel, put it back up to 100. For me, that's a little bit too heavy and makes it kind of hard to precisely steer because you're fighting a lot of strength as much as you can with a G920, more often than you should be. What you want is for a wheel to feel heavy when it's supposed to feel heavy, like when the tyre is loaded up and you're cornering hard on tarmac and there's loads of grip, your tyres are warm. That's when you really feel that torque. When you don't want it to feel heavy is when you're on a gravel stage just going around a light curve. It should be nice and light and free. So I find that's about the sweet spot for me. Again, if you want a heavier wheel, turn it up. If you want a lighter wheel, turn it down. Next one on the list is tyre load. Tyre load adds a fixed amount of weight to the steering wheel over everything. It's like a blanket setting. It's almost, you could almost call it tyre friction. It's how hard it is to turn the wheel based on the grip of the tyres, and it's a fixed level. So I find this just makes it feel like you're driving a car with 2 flat tyres if you leave it at 100%. And to be honest, I don't have it on at all. Maybe this will work better on other types of wheelbase. I haven't yet tried this game with my other setup. I'm doing this just for this video. I've been playing this game because a few people asked me about it. So leave that at 0, otherwise the wheel is literally just heavy the entire time. But what I mean by that, it isn't like self-aligning torque where when you turn, it's trying to push you back. That's what, you want that. This is heavy from the word go. So you'll be going in a straight line and you try and turn the wheel and the wheel's just fucking heavy. Like, oh, bloody hell. Like I say, like you've got 2 flat tyres. So turn that down to 0 is my recommendation there. Feel free to put it up. You'll see what I mean, and you'll soon put it straight back down again. So 0 for that. Next one in the list, self-center. This is similar to self-aligning torque because it is again about the wheel trying to center itself. But this is more based on the friction of the tyres within a corner, specifically. So whereas the self-aligning torque is again a fixed value, so when you're off-center, there is a fixed amount of force applied trying to correct it. Self-center is a dynamic force, and that will vary based on how hard you're cornering, how sharp you're cornering, at what speed you're cornering, and how much grip the tyres have. If you have this all the way up at 100%, which is default, you will find it, in my opinion, too heavy around the harder corners. And again, you're like, oh, bloody hell, this is too much for as much as the G920, G29 can provide. I find 25% to be about the sweet spot. Again, try it out. Once you've set the other settings, do them all one at a time and go out and do a stage and try it, see how it feels. Never tune loads of things at once. If you adjust them all at once, you don't know what's made what difference. So do one of these at a time. The best way is to turn them all down and then turn one up at a time to see how it affects how your wheel feels. This is if you want to tune it yourself. If you just want to use my settings, obviously they're here for you, which is kind of the point of the video, but also to explain to you what each of them does so you have a better understanding. A lot of YouTube videos just say, yeah, do this, do this, do this, do this. Really loose explanation, doesn't really tell you what's going on. What I'm trying to do here is give you the same understanding about the settings as what I have. That way, if you want to adjust things to your own taste, you can and you know what you're doing. So, yeah, self-center. It's the force applied from the tyres when you're cornering based on how hard you corner, how fast you corner, how much grip you have. And this just scales that effect up or down. So, like I say, for me, 25 is about the sweet spot. The problem with these lower end wheels that don't have a lot of torque or a lot of speed is that it's very easy to muddy out the feedback from the road by having everything up too much. And you just end up with a wheel that feels a bit heavy and really vague and doesn't really give you the feedback you should. You have to set your expectations at a level which is fair for the hardware you're using. You can't expect direct drive performance. You know, you can't expect even Fanatic or Thrustmaster performance in this scenario. But this will give you a wheel that at least gives you proper feedback as to what's going on. Overall, these settings, the wheel's going to feel lighter than perhaps you might like it to, but that's the performance of this wheel. It only does 2.5 to 3 Newton meters. It can't be as strong as some of the others. So just bear that in mind. If you use these settings and think, oh, the wheel feels a bit light, it's because it has to feel a little bit light. It doesn't have the strength to do anything else. And the reason it feels like, say, you're going in a straight line, it feels a little bit light, is because then there is headroom so that when you're cornering hard with hot tyres on tarmac, it can then get heavier so that you can feel the corner. If you already have it all the way up to the maximum and you corner hard, and the G-forces should load up through the wheel, and they can't because you're already at 100%. You have to keep everything somewhere in the middle so that the wheel can load you up a bit more when you're cornering with grip, and so it can go lighter when you're cornering and sliding out, losing traction. You know, it's got to be in the middle there somewhere. That's what these settings, I've tuned them for. So anyway, yeah, self-center about 25. If you prefer a heavier wheel as you corner, turn it up. If you prefer a lighter wheel as you corner based on grip, turn it down. And the very last one here is recentering force. This is almost irrelevant. It's just the force with which it recenters the wheel at the start of a race. If you happen to start the race and the wheel's on the wonk, it will straighten itself up. And also, if you've just respawned after a crash and it puts you back on the road, it will spin the wheel round to the middle if it's not already there. Doesn't affect anything else in the game. Nothing to do with the driving whatsoever, much to what other people sometimes say. It even says it here in the text, so it's not one to get confused. So that's your force feedback settings. Give them a go. I've explained what they all do. If you want to tweak, have a little tweak. But as I say, if you do want to tweak from scratch, put them all down, start one at a time. Go out, do a stage, try it, next one, next one, next one. That's how you tune these things properly. So let's have a little look down the list now. Now we're into the vibrations. And again, for me, they just don't seem to work. But these are really almost unimportant. These are all effects, just using the vibration motor in your wheelbase. So turn them up, if they work for you, turn them up, turn them down, do them one at a time, turn them all off. Brake pedal and throttle pedal don't apply here, they're only for the Fanatic V3s with the vibration motors on, so ignore those bottom two. Collision, engine, ground surface, suspension, tyre slip and overall vibration. Overall vibration is as it sounds, it will turn the overall strength of everything up and down, just like the overall force for your force feedback does. And then the rest of the individual effects themselves. If they work for you, play around with them one at a time. You might like them, you might not. For me, they just don't even work. So I can't tell you why that is, but thankfully it's unimportant. What's important is your force feedback settings. I do like vibrations for certain things. I'm not a fan of tyre slip, suspension, ground surface, and collisions. I definitely am. If I have a crash, it's nice to get a vibration. If the road is lumpy and bumpy, it's nice to have vibrations from that, from the suspension and the road surface. But for me, it just doesn't seem to work. So I don't know why that is. But yeah, you can tune those to how you want them. I don't really need to explain how they work. It's very simple. Turn them up or down, and that's it until you get them where you want them. But hopefully that's been of help to you. you know, watch the video twice if I've waffled too much and you've forgotten what I said at the beginning about each of these settings. Again, the important ones are here, and of course, when you come back here to your clutch and your brake saturation, they're also very important. Otherwise, you'll have a very strange experience where you can't brake 100%, and where you're having to put the clutch down all the way to the floor to be able to change gear. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you like this sort of content, for us a sub, that would be brilliant. There's lots more to come over the next year. I'm really going to try and get this channel up and running. Also on that note, I really want to invest in a proper camera instead of a mobile phone, some proper lighting, some proper tripods, all the other bits and pieces that the bigger YouTube channels want. So if you really like what I'm doing, there is a donate link in the description. If you could spare us £1 or $1 or whatever, that would be absolutely amazing. Obviously, if you don't want to, don't worry about it. But everyone is appreciated. That's all going to help to move the channel forward over this coming year. So yeah, thank you very much. Have a good day, and as always, take it easy.